Hello, welcome to the Ocean of Sound Summit. We have with us today Dunja Rasic. Welcome, Dunja.
Pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting.
So excited for this interview, but I feel like I don't know if there is any way to be completely prepared for this, but we'll see where it goes.
No.
Okay, I'm going to begin by reading your bio, and then Amany will begin with our questions for you today. I'm delighted to see where this is going to go. Okay, Dunja Rasic earned her PhD in Islamic Studies at the Free University Berlin. Her primary research field is medieval intellectual history with a focus on Arabic Cosmology, philosophical Sufism, and the Islamic philosophy of language. She is currently working on her second book, which is focusing on jinn doubles and the problem of evil in Arabian Sufism. And let me add to that her first book is called The Written World of God, the Cosmic Script, and the Art of Ibn Arabi. And I've been making my way through this book. I'll admit right now that I have not completed it, but it is an amazing study that I'm absolutely loving, and I feel like a student who's not quite prepared for the exam this morning, but very excited to dive into it. So I want to also welcome my co-host Amany Shalaby. Amany Shalaby, we met. She was the translator for my spiritual teacher for the last 12 years of his life, Sheikh Muhammad al-Jamal of Jerusalem. And Amany has her master's in comparative philosophy of religions, her postgraduate degree in Islamic studies and Sufism, and she is a founder of Universal Chaplaincy, which I have gone through her chaplaincy program. And she is also a co-teacher in the program, The Ocean of Sound. So welcome, Amany. Welcome, Dunja. Very excited.
Thank you, Mastura. Nice to meet you, Dunja, and it's a pleasure to have you with us today. It's very exciting, and I would like to know what sparked your interest in Ibn Arabi cosmology of the letters, and what inspired you to start that studies of the Akbaranian work?
It feels that it began almost a lifetime ago when I was a student aspiring, working on my gaining my bachelor degree in Islamic studies at the University of Belgrade. I was naturally not yet a member of Ibn Arabi Society, but in Ibn Arabi Society, we are often reminded that we are standing on the shoulders of giants. And it was one of these giants. It was the work of Professor William Chittick that first introduced me to the topic. It is a now classical work in the field, the Self-Disclosure of God, the Principles of Ibn Arabi's Cosmology. In the introduction to this book, Chittick described one of his abandoned projects. And it began off with a simple idea to introduce the structure of nature of the universe, the act of Genesis, to summarize Ibn Arabi's teachings as best as one could by speaking only about the letters of the Arabic alphabet. This abandoned project was to be based on the chapter 198 of Ibn Arabi's magnum opus, the Meccan Revelations. It was actually this book that got me to read the Meccan Revelations in Arabic for the first time. And it was also then that I discovered that Chittick abandoned his project. And although I searched, there was next to nothing to be found on the topic back then. But it was long ago. I was still a bachelor student, and it did not occur to me yet that I will one day be getting a PhD degree in Islamic studies, and that I will actually be setting upon this task myself to write this book that I really wanted to read for a long time, but I couldn't because it was at that point to be written.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you started your journey from there of studying that work, and then like you decided to write this work, that the first book you wrote. How that came about?
Actually, it was not a direct journey. It was an idea that was rooted in my mind, but I ended up doing a PhD, my PhD dissertation on a very dry, regular, boring topic, plainly speaking. I submitted my doctoral dissertation in 2018, and I was still pondering where to go from that point. I did not seriously consider dedicating myself to Agrarian studies truly and completely until that point. The starting point for me was a journey to Algeria. I had the pleasure of spending 2 weeks at the Zawiya of the Sufi Sheikh Sidi Muhammad Tijani, who generously decided to host participants of the Perenia Verba Summer School on Sufism. I did my master thesis on Ibn Arabi. If there are coincidences in this world, I applied by a mere coincidence. But it was actually the conversations and the long hours of discussions with Sufis of the Tijani Zawiya in Tamasin and other members of Perenia Verba Summer School that actually directly and irrevocably pushed me in this direction. I also got 2 valuable gifts from the Sheikh himself to help me with my journey. One of those gifts was my first copy of Al-Futuhat al-Makkiyya in Arabic. And another gift to help me proceed was a piece of calligraphy. I call it a piece of calligraphy, though it was actually a talisman in Akbarian sense of the word. It was a copy of the Surah Al-Fatiha, who was supposed to protect me and help me as I proceed on this journey of analyzing the topic. Ibn Arabi himself insisted it is dangerous and that it can result in death and madness and loss of reputation for the uninitiated. So the true start of the journey was the late 2017 and 2018. That is when I truly started to work on this book. And I've been an aspiring scholar in Agrarian studies ever since, hoping to proceed in this direction in the years to come.
Beautiful. And I appreciate that. If I can jump in there, it's because one of the questions that has come to me in diving into this study as myself, you know, and wanting to learn more about it is like, how much of this can you really understand without having some like divine intervention, if you will, to guide you along the path of understanding?
Ibn Arabi's fear was that we can actually understand very little. And that was one of the greatest joys of this research, to discover the art of Ibn Arabi. The diagrams, the surviving diagrams in the hand of Ibn Arabi himself. Because Ibn Arabi insisted that the science of the letters is a prerogative, a privilege of God's friends and God himself. That even the knowledge of the letters is very difficult to convey to the uninitiated. And as a result, Ibn Arabi relies on complex diagrams in his works, which were supposed to help people comprehend this knowledge, because he said we all have imaginal faculties, we all have the power of imagination, even if our spiritual and rational capacities are limited. So even though we cannot immediately comprehend his teachings, contemplating his diagrams might actually help us proceed with this quest for knowledge. And it was great joy and honor for me to be able to assemble all surviving diagrams of Ibn Arabi and actually publish them for the first time. That was one of the most interesting parts of the process for me, of the writing process.
Was there like a sparkling moment when you were looking at one of the diagrams that opened for you a way of understanding? Because like I remember years ago, I tried to read Al-Futuhat al-Makkiyya in Arabic, which is my native language, and I found it very difficult to understand. Just a year ago, when we started the program about the sound, that all of a sudden something sparked me to open and to look deeper, and all of a sudden, as I read Ibn Arabi, I started to understand some of the concepts which I was not able to understand before. And was that like true to you too? Like when a certain diagram or certain sentence opened it for you to dive deep and understand it? And what was that, if you can share with us?
It is a familiar feeling. If the spark ever came, it was subtle. It is as Ibn Arabi said, if you read the text of the Quran and it appears to you that one verse has the same meaning as the day before, you're doing something wrong. If it happened, it was a subtle change. I read daily, regularly, Ibn Arabi's work, especially Al-Futuhat al-Makkiyya, and I always find new layers to the familiar topics, and the book always yields a bit more, day after day after day. I'm not assuming or presuming that I have came to the bottom of the topic of the letters, if that is even possible.
If that is possible, right.
Such topics are akin to the Quran, Ibn Arabi says. They are like the ocean without shore. For example, this calligraphy, this Fatiha that I received as a gift from the Zawiya. When a calligrapher refused to elaborate on the specific properties of his work, but Ibn Arabi and Sufis in general insist that letters get their specific properties not just from their spirits, but also from their orthographic forms. And for the sake of fairness, a day later, the calligrapher did one present for each participant of the summer school, but only mine had letters that were curving upwards like spirals, very akin to cosmological diagrams Ibn Arabi himself was painting. And I look at this calligraphic piece daily, and I haven't figured it out, though I am hoping one day to come to the bottom of it too. It was my first encounter with applied letterism, of a Sufi attempting to use the powers of letters to achieve certain goal, in this case, to use them as blessing and as a protection.
So can you, is kind of in layman's terms, if you will, give your like just the basic idea of letters as you know, having their own spirits, their own consciousness, and how they go beyond just communicating words that you know, so many of us just take language for granted?
I can try. At the core of it is a general idea that when Sufis like Ibn Arabi write about existence, they write about the three great books, the Holy Quran, the world, and human beings. Ibn Arabi believed that the whole world was created when God pronounces a single word, that is kun, to be. The idea, of course, comes from the Quran, where several verses read, when he wishes for something to be, he says to that thing be, or kun, and it is. There are Sufis who believe that the creative word of God, kun, has 28 meanings corresponding to the 28 letters of the Arabic alphabet, which then correspond to the 28 levels of existence. For example, God speaks or whispers a letter, and a thing steps into existence. The idea might be a bit difficult to explain shortly, but Ibn Arabi speaks of the creative force as the breath of the All Merciful, Nafs al-Rahman. He compares it to a human breath, and he fully identifies this act of breathing with the act of speaking. When we would explain that by focusing with regard to human anatomy, we could say that breath is a prerequisite not just of life, but also of speech. One inhales, the air travels to the human articulatory system, and where the air is blocked by articulatory organs, a sound forms. So he fully identifies the act of breathing with the act of speaking, and the properties of speech influence what will be created. Once again, to explain to it metaphorically, human words have certain impacts. They can trigger some emotions in people around us. They can cause some things to happen. It functions in a similar way. He actually divides the letters of the Arabic alphabet, or he distinguishes between spoken letters, written letters, and the so-called letters of power, the summon letters. Of course, the human speech has a short-term effect. The written words and texts could have a longer influence and impact on the world around us, but friends of God also have access to the so-called letters of power, letters that are imbued with the so-called energy or himma, the spiritual power, which can then be used to cause specific long-term impacts in the world around us, even if the text in question is destroyed, which was, of course, the intention behind the present that I got at the Zawiya at Thammasini. That's the so-called applied letterism. It's a lesser known aspect of Ibn Arabi's teachings. It was also a source of embarrassment for his students and followers in the centuries to come. But Ibn Arabi himself used to make talismans, whose power is, of course, based on letters and the properties of the letters of the Arabic alphabet. And there are surviving talismans, or one surviving talisman in Ibn Arabi's hand at the holograph of his manuscript of Kitab al-Tajalliyat, which is currently being kept in Turkey.
Wow. Yeah, you know, when I dive into his work, all of a sudden it became clear to me at one point, not all of it, of course, because it has no bottom, as we said, but like when he said that the world is created of the 28 letters, all of a sudden, because my background is physics and engineering, I kind of found that the elementary particles, you know, you can compare them to the letters, which again, if you found the, you know, quarks, the subatomic particles, then you end up with vibration. And vibration is like, if we find like the audible range is just a certain spectrum of this vibration, but there is cosmic vibration. And somehow our speech is in harmony with that. So, and all of a sudden, I could also, I used to be skeptic of the talisman. We grew in the Islamic culture, looking down at these things as unscientific. But all of a sudden, I could understand that it carries the energy of the one who speaks. Like, as you said, like words may affect us emotionally, may make us cry or raise our blood pressure or, make us happy. So in a way that this talisman carries that energy of the one who spoken them and can really has an effect. So have you came to understanding the meaning of maybe one particular letter and its effect, or did you come across Ibn Arabi speaking about one of the letters, who spoke about all the letters, but have you come across one of the letters that opened for you a little deeper understanding, and what was that, if you would like to share with us?
The question is a bit complex. In my book, I go through all of the 28 letters of the Arabic alphabet, their meaning and properties. But it is truly, as you said, and Ibn Arabi himself also compares letters to elements and particles. Although, let's speak figuratively in modern terms, although the number of chemical elements is limited, they can form countless numbers of combinations. It is the same with letters forming words. And the letters of the Arabic alphabet, Ibn Arabi said, have different properties in their isolated forms, when they're on their own, and when they're used in combination with other letters. I wrote on the properties of each of the letters in their isolated forms. But when we speak about the combination of letters, the one of them that I studied also in my book are of course Alif, Lam, Mim, the disjointed letters from the Quran. Because Ibn Arabi, you relied on the properties of these letters to write his only surviving talisman, which we still have, which was supposed to harness the properties of these three letters. What exactly Ibn Arabi wanted to achieve with this talisman remains unclear, but we know relatively few things about the symbolism of the disjointed letters Alif, Lam, Mim, which were, among other things, meant to explain the relationship between God and the world, between the creator and the created, to convey the general idea that God provided humans with signs, leading them back to him, with the signs on the horizon and signs in their souls. And this is something Ibn Arabi insists on, that the world of nature is filled with these signs for those who have eyes to see, that even the movement pattern on worms in the ground can lead those who pay attention to knowledge, to their God, to whatever they're aspiring to.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. I love that. Because we're all given different passions and things to explore in the world. And so it just, it's just, as you say that, I just get the visual of, all of the roads of whatever passion you're given to, what you're aspiring, whether you're studying the worms in the ground or the stars in the sky or the letters, and, they all have the power, the ability to lead to the knowledge of God.
That is a very Akbarian idea, that the world is filled with signs, that it is rich with meanings, and that it has great depth. And in this regard, there is no mountain that can compete with a grain of sand. The problem is not just that the humans choose not to look. Ibn Arabi also insisted that another problem is that they're selective. Where will they direct their gaze? God appears everywhere. even in the ugly face of a genie, a spirit of fire, even in animals that appear ugly to the human eyes. But this is something Ibn Arabi insists at the very first chapter of the Meccan Revelations, that ugly things can lead to beautiful outcomes sometimes, if we are only willing to look at them for long enough. And then again, he also says that things are relative with regards to beauty. Human notion of beauty is relative because when we speak in the absolute terms, the whole world is beautiful because his face is reflected everywhere, because God is everywhere. That is the basic idea.
Beautiful. So I see you in the cover, and I don't know who worked the cover of the published book for you, but I see the wow is distinguished. So why the cover has the letter wow? I know from my reading that the wow is very special, has a special status. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
I will not take credit for the design of the book. The authors in the academia have, in general, very little say on the matter. I can only speak for my own reasons why did I approve of this cover and the reasons why I like it. And of course, the reason why the letter Vav can be considered someone special in Akbarian Sufism. It is a labial letter. It is pronounced at the human lips, at the far end of the human vocal tract. And in order to reach the lips, the air must pass through the whole vocal tract from the lungs all the way to the lips. Ibn Arabi believed that the letters also get the properties from the places of pronunciations. So as the air must pass through the whole vocal tract, Ibn Arabi took this as the indication that the letter Vav somehow possesses the properties of all other letters. Hence, it was considered someone special in Akbarian Sufism, and in its isolated form, it also stands for the step levels of spiritual development. It is a symbol of a spiritual journey of a seeker. And as such, it is also dear to me, and this is why I chose to approve this cover, which is also aesthetically beautiful.
If I may have a follow-up with that, that is powerful what you said, that it has the collection of all the letters because it passes through all the vocal tract, and it's in Arabic used to mean and. So it's waw al-jama'. It's like collecting or assembling everything together. And, you know, from my studies also, the waw is a symbol of the golden ratio, the Fibonacci, like the spiral kind of. So it's it has a special place because of that. And is there any other special letter or that you can share with us some knowledge about?
Each letter is special in its own way. I'm currently looking into the letter Alif. The letter, Ibn Arabi says, that is actually not a letter, due to the fact of what it stands for. And Alif stands for the divine essence, or in other words, for the nature of God as he is before he created the world. Even the mere act of thinking about the divine essence, and thus the letter Aleph, can be considered a luxury of thinking. However, the reason why I'm looking into this letter is because Ibn Arabi repeatedly compares it to the standing position in prayer of a human being who stands And the standing position in Akbarian Sufism is usually not generally looked upon in a favorable way, because a standing human appears so tall and proud and independent. The human, Ibn Arabi insisted, closer to God as they prostrate to the ground in prayer. However, standing, and especially standing during the night, performing night vigils, was considered somewhat special in Akbarian Sufism, and closely associated with the certain type of perfect humans, which are the highest step level a human being can reach. So I'm researching the letter Aleph in that regard as a symbol of human, the lover, who is completely and absolutely focused on the divine beloved. And I'm hoping to develop it into perhaps a new book, a new research on the so-called night folk, a people who pray during the night, a people who withdraw themselves from the world, and for whose sake God created the night, because he loved them so much that he decided to hide these special, perfect humans from the world, so that he could have them all for himself. I'm hoping to soon produce a new book on the night vigils and the symbolism of the night and night prayers in the Akbarian context.
Wow, beautiful, mashallah.
With regard to the letter Aleph, of course.
And so just your second book, is it your second book already written?
It is written and it is undergoing peer reviews currently, and inshallah I will get a decision on its fate next week. In case peer reviewers are satisfied, and in case the editorial board is satisfied, it will be published with State University of New York Press by the end of the next year.
Oh, inshallah, that's exciting.
It is.
Yes, yes. And so then you've already got I love this because, you know, as you said earlier before we turned on the recording, can you say that again about, you know, what you said about the books that are yet to be written as a engaging you know what I'm talking about? I love the way that you phrase that, and it's very inspiring.
It was actually Umberto Eco's own approach. In one of his works, he pointed out the long and venerable history of the double metaphor, of humans perceiving the whole world as a text, and a text of a book, for instance, the text of the Quran, as the world. And Eco says the best way to approach this double metaphor, the best way to interpret it, is to contribute to discussions by producing new books. And yes, this is what I tried to do with the written world of God. I think you know what I mean about what I mentioned in the earlier discussions. This book about the symbolism of the letters of the Arabic alphabet is something that I wanted to read since my students' days. And I couldn't because Professor William Chittick simply decided to abandon his project to the breath of the Old Merciful. And it took me several years, as a matter of fact, to embark on this quest for knowledge, and actually to gather determination to be the one who will be writing books that I always wanted to read and couldn't, because they're simply yet to be written. This is what I'm currently doing. My second book was, of course, on jinn doubles and the problem of evil in Akbarian Sufism, gathering and interpreting the stories of the many adventures of the jinn folk in the Islamic normative tradition, in poetry books and literature, and of course in the works of Ibn Arabi and his students and followers, And such is, of course, the case with my third book, which goes into the symbolism of the letter Aleph, the symbolism of the night, what the term Layla meant for Ibn Arabi and night vigils.
That's so deep. It seems like every letter can has a book in its own. As you find in his books, usually the work is distributed along his books. So to collect them in one book about one certain topic seems a wonderful approach, which will do great service for the people who love to read his book and contemplate it. Like, have you, when you are interpreting his books, are you like relying a little bit also on science and modern kind of discoveries in different fields, such as psychology or physics, or like you just convey like what he means in the kind of the unseen realm?
I am an aspiring scholar in Islamic studies, and my specialization is in the history of Islamic philosophy. So, of course, my methodology approach is colored and determined by my academic training and academic credentials, in the same way as anthropologists and ethnographers would probably prefer a more hands-on approach to contemporary forms of Akbarian Sufism. But I was also reminded by your remarks and comments on another thing, and that is that Ibn Arabi himself wrote specific books and treatises, one dedicated to one of the letters of the Arabic alphabet. And some of these have even been translated into English, like his book of the letter Aleph and book of the letter Ba, which were both published in the Journal of Ibn Arabi Society, for those who are interested in seeing how Ibn Arabi himself approaches individual letters of the alphabet.
So he, because he touches on, in his work, on psychology, philosophy, and science all together, like he's multi-layered like that.
It is something I once heard during a group discussion by the members of Ibn Arabi Society, that Ibn Arabi is actually not far from anything in life. His writing opus is so big. The topics he covers are so diverse that Islamologists who can research almost anything they want by focusing on Ibn Arabi's works. For example, one of my forthcoming projects will be dedicated to food, Ibn Arabi's notion of food, and relying on eating special types of food, on specific culinary recipes to gain spiritual insights and spiritual knowledge. So we have letters, art, of course, metaphysics, ontology, hermeneutics of the Quran, Sharia law, natural history, jinn, night, culinary recipes, even poetry. Yeah. That is really
Insan al-Kamil, like he's whole human being. Yeah.
I don't feel so bad because I have a real interest in all of those things, and I have a special interest in food as well. And I feel like I'm always flip-flopping back and forth between those topics. And so now I don't feel like I'm not anywhere to the degree of where Ibn Arabi is in the depth of it. But I guess now I feel a little bit better about myself, that I'm not the only one that flip-flops back and forth as a spiritual approach to all those various topics. But I've also had a great passion to look into food and the body and spirituality, which actually one of the first summits that I ever did was the food body spirit connection. So I really look forward to reading that book. Really
it will be more of a paper, as a matter of fact. I'm hoping to finish it in the next few months.
If there was a way that I could read it, I would.
Of course. Of course.
Love that.
I will aim to publish it, of course, as soon as it's done.
Beautiful. Okay. I want to make sure I'm following so I see that when it comes out.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question about something that I was reading in your book about, the letters, and I kind of want to bring up some of the specifics in the topic for people who are brand new to this topic. But, you talk about the letters as, of course, like the letters have some consciousness, they have meanings, each one is a book in itself. You were talking about the letters in terms of the four mothers, the hot, dry, cold, the hot, cold, dry, moist, and that the letters that have properties, and then as they combine, the different combinations of the mothers produce different things. And as I was reading this, I was just really kind of perhaps getting a sense of how a vibration of sound with a spoken word with an intention can actually start to have some translation into physicality in this 3D world. And so could you say a little bit more about that?
Perhaps it would be easier to refer the readers, and you, of course, to the forthcoming Journal of Ibn Arabi Society, because the transformation of the letters of the Arabic alphabet into matter, organic and inorganic, is one of the most complex topics that I ever encountered in Ibn Arabi's books. Among other things, it includes a whole A4 page of mathematical calculations, and one diagram, and the two others that I tried to draw myself to illustrate the process. But of course, Ibn Arabi figuratively compares this process to, yes, the writing of a book. Letters have different properties, yes, including properties like hot, cold, dry, and moist, which Ibn Arabi refers to four mothers, which then form to create the so-called four elements: fire, water, air, and earth. And all things in existence, Ibn Arabi believed, are made of these four elements in different combinations to in order to make different forms of existence. But yes, he did try to explain this process in detail with mathematical calculations. And I don't want to brag, but I believe I even found a mistake in these calculations, because the numbers at one point don't add up to what the text explains. It is a really complex system that I try to make sense of in a paper that will be published in a spring edition of this journal.
And did you find that in Al-Futuhat al-Makkiyya itself, or it is in another?
It is in the Futuhat al-Makkiyya, especially concentrated in the chapter 2, chapter 60, and chapter 198. There are other works going into letters and the properties of letters, especially Kitab Alif and the book of the letter Ba, the book of Ba, and several others which are listed actually in one of the first pages of my book. I tried to go through all of this material as I was writing the book. I tried to look beyond Al-Futuhat. Because in spite of the fact that Ibn Arabi says that the core of all of his teachings are gathered in Al-Futuhat, one can get a pretty comprehensive overview by reading these huge works. I do believe that the devil is in the detail, and that works, books and papers should be rich in scope. So I tried to amass as many details as I could and present them to the reader with my own personal interpretation of these teachings. It is not a definite interpretation. I don't believe that anyone can give a definite judgment, a definite interpretation of works that are as rich and often seemingly mutually contradictional as Ibn Arabi's, but in the end, as Akbarians often quote the Brethren of Purity, a quote reading, God loves those who seek perfection in their own works. And this is what I try to do, to approach perfection as much as I can.
Yeah, mashallah.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Masur.
I was just going to say that it's like, I mean, if you look at even the arguments, I guess, in between science and religion and art, you know, as the broader topics, and how they seem to contradict each other, yet in the deep way all lead to uncover the same body of knowledge, right? I guess to me, it's no surprise that you would find contradictions within that complex and expansive body of work, right? Because that's everywhere.
And it is like looking from a different perspective. If you are looking from the, cosmology, different than psychology, different than, but together they integrate to give us a better view of reality, and which we can only approach, but we can't know in perfect way. We can approach that perfection, and that is, we should aspire to always do that. So Ibn Arabi also talks about the relationship of the letters and the planet. Have you kind of deciphered some of what in your interpretation, how he came to that conclusion? What does it mean?
Yes, but first I would like to address one other thing you said about contradictions. They have long confused the specialists in the field. And one of his interpreters, Al-Nabulus, even said, but that's the way things are supposed to be. Like all these people believing in the same God, but having different notions of him. And it is very, very, very easy finding a confirmation to one's ideas in Ibn Arabi's works. Seemingly finding confirmation to your theories with direct quotes. Yes, and this is something that Ibn Arabi said, but he also said something else that seemingly completely contradicts the quote you found. Such quotes, seemingly mutually contradictory, confuse the scholars, and my personal approach is that the same one that William Chittick had was to give two quotes, a contradiction, one quote next to one other, for people to also interpret for themselves, alongside my interpretation, of course. With regard to your second question about connections between the letters and planets, he doesn't speak about this very connection. He rather associates one letter of the Arabic alphabet with the heavenly spheres. In Ibn Arabi's works, we have a Ptolemaic system based on the teachings of Ptolemy, which were adopted by Sufis around 11th century. And Ibn Arabi's diagrams thus depict a planet Earth surrounded by the 7 planetary spheres and 2 other spheres. He envisioned that planets actually swim in those spheres, which then surround the Earth. So when he associates the letters with them, he associates it with the whole sphere, not just with the planet. So he speaks of the 28 levels of existence corresponding to the 28 letters of the Arabic alphabet. 7 of these letters, of course, correspond to the planetary spheres. But just to make things more complicated, he also speaks about the rotation of the spheres, which creates the letters of the Arabic alphabet. This is a process I tried to illustrate in my forthcoming paper. It is a very complex topic, especially since I also tried in my previous paper to write about the music of the spheres and how Ibn Arabi interpreted this concept. In any case, it is a complex topic. I believe that the solution lays in the fact that he believed it is the breath of the All-Merciful, the creative force of God, which spins the heavenly spheres, forcing them to rotate. He associated this breath with the letters themselves, with the act of speaking, which might, but just might, serve to explain this connection, which he actually never elaborated in great detail in his works.
Yeah, it's kind of his one of his most mysterious, because he doesn't talk about it in details.
He does not, and it is curious, really curious, because he also gives his reasons. His resolve was formed not just because he feared that uninitiated might misuse the power of letters to achieve selfish goals. Ibn Arabi also feared the loss of reputation, and those fears were justified. We can see it in the works of Ibn Khaldun just mere centuries later, how Ibn Khaldun writes about the evil Sufis like Ahmad al-Buni and Ibn Arabi, the founders of the Islamic science of the letters. Here, just mere centuries later, we don't see the science of the letters as the divine science, the holy science of wise men and God's friends. We see it as being associated with magicians, with people who corrupt the faith and resort to dubious methods to achieve their goal. Probably similar associations already existed as early as the 13th century when Ibn Arabi wrote. So he doesn't just say, I want to protect people from themselves, from getting hurt by using the power of letters in the way they shouldn't be used. I also need to protect myself and my own reputation if people were to try to put into practice things that they read in my works and then they don't work, thus ruining my reputation by proclaiming me a fraud. He had fears for his own reputation, which is one of the reasons he avoided this seemingly controversial topic. And he even goes at, it is interesting because he claims all he ever wrote, he wrote as a result of the divine revelation. So it was almost the direct order of God
had to be, yes,
inducing him to write.
Really, yeah.
And still, he says, if it weren't for the fact that Ibn Barakjan put some of his teachings about the letters into his works, into his written works, I wouldn't have refrained from writing a single thing about them. He would have opposed this direct divine decree out of fear. He feared the letters, he feared for himself, and his reputation.
It brings for me a question, because you also write about these things. Have you, have also kind of fear of certain readers coming across your book, or that was not in your mind?
I am an aspiring scholar who is hoping to one day get a tenure-track position in the academia. And I often wonder, with that goal in mind, whether I have chosen the wrong topic. By that, I don't mean the letters, or the symbolism of the letters, or the topics of my next works, like the problem of evil, but Sufism itself. Because I did encounter very judgmental comments about Sufism itself when I was doing my PhD and contemplating my next steps. For example, I had my supervisor tell me that experts in Islamic studies focusing on Sufism only understand each other when they speak about their nonsense. So I often wonder whether I made a mistake with those career goals in mind. But then again, I also believe it is actually the topic that chooses the writer and not the other way around. Writing is a long and painful process. There's a painstaking, years-long research process. Then there is a writing process, and once again a publication process and peer review process that takes years. And I don't think one could go through all of these steps if not for great love, joy, and happiness one finds in writing and in different topics that for some reason resonate with us. So in the
worth it at the end, and helps you to overcome the fear. I think it's highly respectful that you are standing for your call and your passion, in spite of the resistance you might find in the academic field or outside. But you will definitely also find people who are passionate about that work and will certainly benefit from your research. So it's the contradiction that always exists, right?
Not to mention that I am researching the works of scholars to whom Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy refers to possibly the greatest of all Muslim philosophers. And yet there is a resistance, not just to Sufism, but topics that are not very, very modern, 13th century. Why the need to go so deep into the past? But then again, I believe that one needs to go to the past in order to understand the present. I don't think those are exaggerations when academic works divide the history of Sufism and sometimes even the history of Islamic civilization to the period before and after Ibn Arabi. His works left deep and lasting impact on the culture, on philosophy, literature, poetry, influencing the lives and works of scholars in the centuries ahead. And it is a great joy to be able to find new topics, new perspectives, unresearched aspects of his works that I can bring to light. It is a source of great happiness and joy for me, and a great motivation to carry on as before in the years ahead.
Beautiful. It just reminds me of, the hidden treasure that desires to be known and needs the treasure chest in order to be opened for that treasure to be found.
It's another Aquarian, deeply Aquarian thought. He says, if you weren't meant for perfection, that means you wouldn't be yearning for it either. Maybe we were always meant to be the writers of the books we have written. So perhaps it was always meant to be.
Yes. Beautiful. I just want to ask one more question about something you said. You mentioned the music of the heavenly spheres, and I'm wondering if you can say a little bit more about that.
I recently published a paper on the topic in the special edition of Religions Journal dedicated to Ibn Arabi. Music of the spheres is a concept Ibn Arabi adopted from Pythagoras and from Greek philosophy in general. Music of the spheres is the term usually used to describe the sounds of the heavenly spheres rotating and interacting with one another. I originally approached the topic with hopes that it will turn into a book, that I will get to find evidence indicating this music is actually the sound of the creative word of God bringing the universe into existence. This is not how it happened, but the life is full of surprises. Ibn Arabi rather associated the music of the spheres with prayer. It did not have a very big influence in the spiritual practices of the Aquarians, but it was deeply associated with prostrating in prayer. In other words, there is a curious paragraph in the Al-Futuhat al-Makkiyah where Ibn Arabi says, if you prostrate in prayer and recite from the Quran during the prayer and do not hear this glorious music ringing in your ears, then perhaps you did not prostrate as you should have. Long story short, that is the role of the music of the spheres, the main role of this heavenly music in Akbarian Sufism.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Wow. Beautiful.
Amany, you were speaking of the instrument, the oud?
The oud, the Arabic instrument, the oud, when you study its history, you learn that they have the tunes and so forth based on the signs of the letters and the numbers to produce these harmonics. Also, the shape and everything, every part of that instrument has a name that carry a spiritual meaning, you know. So it's very interesting to find it ingrained in that the philosophers such as, I think, Al-Farabi and Ibn Sina, who wrote on music, were before Ibn Arabi, and probably inspired him also, that I think Al-Farabi invented a musical instrument, and it is said he will make people cry or make people laugh in how he will produce his music. And so they had this knowledge and this passion. They were philosophers and physicians and astronomers. That is the idea of al-insan al-kamil, the complete or whole or perfect human being who is well-rounded in all this knowledge and integrated in their life. Something we should aspire for, because modern life has separated the sciences in a way that is, I think, not healthy.
Just to
go ahead.
Confusion. Hearing you say this, I realized what I said might be slightly confusing. Ibn Arabi was not among the scholars who denied the impact of the heavenly spheres on planet Earth. He believed in their existence. He believed they have impact on Earth. And there are even hints from Al-Futuhat that he too, like the Brethren of Purity, associated 4 of the 7 planetary spheres with the strings of the lute. 1 sphere or 1 string of the lute, which can be used to influence the human bodily humors and then produce impact on the human body as well. What I meant to say was just that these practices did not play a very big role in the Aquarian Sufism. This is just something I wanted to clarify.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Beautiful.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's all connected.
Mm-hmm.
Beautifully so. So, Dunja, Amany, but I'm noticing time, and I know
Yes.
that you had a stop time that I want to respect. Amany, do you have any questions before we ask our final question?
No questions in particular. It was very, very nice talking to you. I appreciate the invitation for the interview. And all right, as a writer, I am very interested about the reception of my own book. It is my personal rule never to Google my own name on the internet. So the impressions that I get are the letters and messages from readers and colleagues that I receive through the course of my email. So I would like to ask you, once you're finished with readings, to tell me of your impressions. It's more of a small favor to ask than a question.
Sure, we will be happy to.
Yes.
I mean, we're a lover of Ibn Arabi, and we're happy to come across your work and read it.
Thank
and
you.
Write our feedback for sure.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And I believe that the written world of God, I'm already feeling like I'm going to read it at least 3 times. And then I'll let you know, because I feel like, like I'm wanting to study the ocean, but right now I'm just at the foam on the surface. And I know there's so much depth and so much contained in the ocean that's going to take a very long time, if ever in a lifetime, it could be explored. And I
think
honestly, I love the way you put things together in this book. I love the way it's structured so far. And yeah, I'm sorry, Amany, go ahead.
I just, I would like to ask maybe my last question is like, of course, Ibn Arabi work is originally in Arabic. Have you studied Arabic, and do you translate the work, or do you rely on other translation? And what would that be?
Well, currently, it is impossible to study Ibn Arabi through translations, at least Al-Futuhat al-Makkiyah, because this enormous work was not translated to the date. There are several translations, several dozens maybe, of his lesser works. Anka Publishing and Ibn Arabi Society actually made it their mission to translate as many of his works as possible and make them available to the general public. But when it comes to Al-Futuhat, it was not translated completely to the date. And Professor Kritik, once again we return to one of the giants, said, I have never translated it simply because I never had a lifetime to devote to it. Currently there is a translation project ongoing, and it is published by Peer Press, but I think they only made it through 8 books so far, and at this rate it might take them over a decade to finish. A decade or 2 at this rate to reach the end of Al-Futuhat. So luckily, I studied Arabic. I hold a bachelor degree, bachelor, master's, and PhD in Islamic studies. So yes, I did study Arabic language. Otherwise, a great portion of his works, or the major portion, would be just inaccessible to me.
Great. That's wonderful to know.
Yes. So then, any words of wisdom or encouragement or direction that you would like to share with others who are interested in diving into this work to learn more about it, especially I say especially our younger generations who, to me, this, I think the inspiration that I feel to dive into this is to understand the creation and how a spoken word can end up as this. You know what I mean? A mouse that controls a computer that, like, and so, there's a great curiosity that I have to just understand this,
Yes,
that
I, I
that as you said, the levels of of consciousness of creation. And so, yeah, let me just hand it over to you. Any thoughts or encouragement or
I'm not
advice that you'd
sure
like to give?
if I am the right person to give advices, having gained my PhD degree just 3 years ago and being still in the search of a permanent academic position. Yet, what I would perhaps advise the readers and those who are maybe listening to this podcast to follow their dreams. If they find something they care for so deeply, something that is as big source of a joy for them as research and writing is for me, to pursue it to the very end, in spite of the fact that both the letters, both Arabic and Sufism, and especially academia and careers in academia are precarious fields. And yet, I would advise them to pursue their dreams, because that is, I believe, the only possible way we can contribute something hopefully meaningful, something hopefully deeply valuable for life. That is our contribution to the world, possibly the only or the best way we can make that contribution. And that is why I would advise people to have courage to follow their dreams and passions to where they may lead them.
Yeah, it's
Beautiful. That's
definitely beautiful and inspiring. It gives me hope to see young people like you going in such a deep field of Arabic work. So it gives me hope that there will be people who still carry that spiritual path and explain it in a way that hopefully can reach modern readers. So it's been a pleasure to be with you, and I want to thank you very much for coming and spending this time with us.
Thank you.
And we hope to stay in touch. Yeah, and to have you again maybe in the future.
Please write me about your impressions about the book. I would really, really, really love to hear them. And thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you so much. And just, in what you said in terms of the following your inspiration, following your passion, as someone who I believe I had a passion toward this at a much younger age when I was in college, and was kind of like diverted because of that. I was not in the company of people who would understand what I was experiencing, and I didn't have the language to really communicate or the knowledge to know that there was even like a pathway forward that could, that I could keep going with it. So I just want to add that to what you said, because I wish I had heard that advice when I was in college, and feeling like what I was pursuing was not tangible enough to be sustained in the world, so I really appreciate that you shared that, because yeah, here we are and we're back at it. So I'm glad. This is my way of continuing, picking up however many years later in my college inspirations.
When I was at college, I perhaps made the mistake of graduating too soon. If I could go back in time, 3 years in time, I would have extended my PhD studies to 10 years if necessary, gaining more papers, publications, and more years of teaching experience, because sometimes it's not enough to just, passion is not enough. Even being good at what you do and having great knowledge is not enough. Academia is a precarious field, and one simply needs teaching experience and publications, unfair amount of both, in order to have a feasible career, because that is the only career possibly, the way I feel currently, that can sustain a writing practice, a regular writing practice that I'm aspiring to. I wish, that is something I wish I knew when I was a PhD student, that I had someone to tell me that don't be in a hurry. Currently you have your scholarship. Currently you have a secure position. There is a big gap, a chasm between the number of PhD positions and assistant professor positions. There are so few postdoc positions in the field, and you will need so many publications and so much experience to ascend, to make that big step between your PhD studies and the secure income, relatively secure working position and income in life. That is something I also wish I knew back then.
You know, Dunja, I can relate to what you say and what Mastura say, because when I was doing my master degree, I found the academic field itself is not welcoming to some kind of, as you said, research or topics that, and their approach of it as well. And even though I did try to get hired in universities, I at the end made the decision that I will stop trying to apply for the universities, because I found that I didn't like the environment. But it was my blessings that God opened for me a way to be the translator for the Sufi Sheikh Sidi Muhammad al-Jamal, which opened for me a certain way to pursue my passion and share my passion. But, you know, continue to be persistent in what you do, and you're having joy in doing it. And one way or another, the door will be opened for you to share what you have and the knowledge you have, and you will find the people who will truly benefit from it and welcome it. And I pray for the best for you. May God bless your work and give you the position and the place that will help you to flourish in what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind words.
Because we're all students of life, and that is one, you know, that is perhaps just an attitude or a perception that we can choose, is that even if we are no longer in formal studies, that we can still be a student of life and continue to research and to learn.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Dunja, for everything today. And I look forward to finishing this book, reading it 2 more times, and reading the other books that you have coming out and the paper on the food and the culinary.
Fingers crossed.
Yes, on all of it. I'm excited for all of it.
Sounds very interesting, for sure.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. So in the also in the links, I'll include a link to this book, to your first book. Is there any way that you would recommend people who want to follow you somehow, just so that they can see when the other books are coming out and other publications are available? Is there a way for people
As I said, I've been consciously trying to keep my presence online minimal, but I know that will have to end soon with a few of my papers coming out and the second book, hopefully. But for now, people who wish to contact me, I would recommend them to do so through my email and or social networks. And inshallah, relatively soon, I'm planning to open an academia page or a few more pages where I will upload my new books and papers.
Okay. Beautiful, beautiful. All right. So even though you don't Google yourself, we can Google you and find those in the near future, inshallah, God willing. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you both very much. And for those of you watching, please stay tuned. There's more to come, and we will, God willing, we'll be able to have some continued connection with Dunja that we can follow her together. All right, thank you.